Hi, I'm Billy Keels, the host of the Going Long podcast. Every week, I'm going to be here interviewing the absolute best in the business as it relates to real asset investing, as well as real Main Street investors. We're going to be having conversations where you can listen in, and that's going to help you to continue on your path to education so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident in investing long distance. So make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you're liking it as well, because that way you can get every single episode as soon as it comes out. And by the way, don't forget to leave today's episode a 5-star review. Let's go ahead and listen to today's conversation. Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. I'm your host, Billy Keels, and if you've ever wanted to know how to translate the benefits of U.S. real estate to foreigners, then guess what? This is the episode and the conversation that you're going to want to listen to until the very last word. Because you know what? Today's guest is not only originally from Ohio with an MBA from the Ohio State University, he's also lived in over 10 countries in the last 20 years, something close to my heart as well. And he is also has a superpower of connecting foreign buyers to U.S.-based real estate projects, and he's done over 400 transactions. And I'm sure it's probably even higher than that now. He'll tell us all about that. He is also the broker of Buckeye Realty, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation a fellow Ohioan, Terry Yonker. Terry, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Billy. Great being here.
All right, man. It's really, really nice. And I know we talked about this before, so I'm just going to do this right up front because when I get a chance to talk to someone from Ohio, OH. Yeah.
Hello.
There we go. So if you're watching this on the video, this is this thing between us Ohioans. So anyway, yeah, right. It's kind of cool. So listen, Terry, I'm really excited to jump into today's conversation because what you are doing is something that's really dear to my heart and really fits in with what we're doing here at the Going Long podcast. But we got to get started out with you helping us understand where exactly in the world do you live in the U.S.?
Well, we live in Orlando, Florida right now, and I've been in Florida for 16 years, or ever since I graduated Ohio State about 20 years ago. And but we're in the middle of a 6-month road trip right now as a response to the Corona lockdowns. You know, we like to go contrarian, so we're now in Phoenix, Arizona for the month, renting a Sonder unit, and it's been great.
All right, fantastic. So living in Orlando, now doing some traveling out in Phoenix. Yes. So would love that. Okay, yeah. Perfect. Yeah. And what is the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours, Terry?
You know, that's an easy one. With the beauty and the magic of LinkedIn and social media, when I came out to Phoenix, I have an old buddy from Ohio State. Again, it all comes back to the Ohio State University. And we connected and went to an Indians game yesterday, spring training. Hadn't seen him in 20 years, and you would think we just were buddies yesterday. You know, we didn't miss a beat, had a great dinner with his wife and my family. And, you know, it's really that community after 20 years is that where you can seamlessly tap back in. I mean, that's priceless. It's priceless. So it's fantastic. Yeah,
I appreciate you sharing that with us because one of those things when you can make those connections after so many years, you feel like you didn't skip a beat. At the same time, you can share new things that are happening in your life, get a chance to see families and things like that. It's awesome, man. Yeah. So really appreciate you sharing that great positive stuff with us this morning, this afternoon, or this evening, whenever whoever's watching us or listening to us, I guess it is. So here's the thing. I kind of gave some really, really high level about your backstory, but we always love for you to tell the Going Long family your backstory in your own words, and if you could also help us understand maybe some of the most important decisions that you've made along your part of the journey to get you to where you are today.
Sure. Well, you know, the backstory, again, it all comes back to the Ohio and the roots. And I think, you know, growing up in Warren, Ohio, near Youngstown, the east side, where I was, you know, there wasn't much, say, cultural diversity, like not many foreign languages or not many, I don't know, it was pretty regular place. And so I think that's why I was so fascinated with this world like that you live in, Billy. And, you know, the fact that you could just step in and everything is in a foreign language and things that we take like as normal, like a Saturday afternoon tailgate, an Ohio State game, or just simple things like going hunting or fishing in the hills where in other countries that was fascinating to them. You know, I said, wait, you don't have guns and go hunting in the fall? Like, isn't that just what everyone does? Like, and that realization, you know, got me interested in seeing the other cultures and doing it. So I really feel like with what we do, it is that bridge, you know, where especially when you're over there in these other countries and people are helping you so much because you're like a helpless child so often in these other places. it's, you can never repay them wholly in that moment. But how we try to repay is, where I'm here and I feel like being a bridge, I can repay the people that helped me earlier in those countries by helping these other foreigners that are like sometimes helpless children or wandering the forest in the United States, where if they have an advocate on their side, I feel like I can be that guy, that bridge from, that's where there's so often a gap between like middle class Ohio world to French, Chinese, Latin American, be that bridge so that they're acting and operating as Americans on our shoulder, on our soil. And I feel like that's how we can pay them back. So that's kind of been the MO of the moves and everything we're doing here. It's been that underlying push, in my opinion, on what helps us do what we do.
And so I love that, man. So really it is about being able to be an advocate, is being that bridge, and also being able to give back. And it's something that when you live that, when you experience that for a place, when you're out of your quote unquote element, you're in some place new with new different norms, new language, new all of these types of things. You know what it's like. I mean, I've been many times where I was, frustrated or crying and just was like literally crying because it was like, what do I do? I'm here by myself and nobody else speaks my language. And then I started realizing through the evolution, it's not that no one speaks my language. It's that I still haven't learned their language, their culture, their customs. And so that's part of it happens. And so you're now in a unique opportunity to be able to pay that back, which I think that is fantastic. So, and you talked about being from Warren, Ohio, right? And so when, what was your first experience outside of the United States?
Well, aside from fishing trips in Canada, which again, I just thought everybody did that, right? But I guess that's, catch walleye up there. My first real trip was a standard study abroad in Lille, France. And again, that was where kind of what I just described before hit home, where there's no easing into it. There's no transaction. Like one day you're, at the airport in Columbus or Cleveland, and the next day, within hours, you're immersed in it, and there it is. There's no, let's ease into it. And so with that trip, that was an eye opener, and I went hard because I didn't know if I'd ever, at that time you don't have perspective, and I had never gone. None of my family had ever been overseas, and I said this might be the only time I had fear of loss I would ever be here. And so I immersed myself into French, into the culture, into the classes. I mean, I would take the same class 3 times just to first get understanding and then actually learn what they were saying. And even with our British friends, they're who I'm still friends with to this day. They come to Florida and Disney and see us. And, they, of course, would speak English in there. And I was the jerk that said, hey, I would stay in French, saying, I think we should speak French here amongst each other. And they're like, what's the big deal? We just shoot across the channel and just go to France whenever we want. But, that fear of loss. So I think that helped drive the whole push towards, to how we can get deeper in and help language skills and help everyone do what they want to do.
So I love that. And I'm just going to, because I had an experience that was something, I'm just curious, like the very first time that you left the walls of North America, put it this way. And so you were in France. How frequently did you have like that feeling of, you know what, this is just too hard. Like, I just want to be with people that speak language, the same language as me, as English, and we're just going to hang out with them rather than being with other people.
I fought that because that is a comfort. Even when we were in the dorms and the Brits and all of us would congregate, and I was the only American, but we would congregate. And I fought that daily because there's the comfort zone, and I tried to push into it. And again, I think it was the fear that maybe as I'm older has gone away a little bit. But I remember the buzz and the rush saying, I got one shot at this. Don't screw it up. I think so. That helped me counter that a little bit because, again, without knowing the future and looking back, it was kind of silly, when a plane ticket and a hotel room as an adult, you're wherever you want to be. But, with that 20-year-old perspective or whatever it was, I didn't have that as much as you would think, because I was just fighting in fear. And I was always like ramped up saying, oh my goodness, I only have a couple more months. I may never, or a couple more weeks. I got to do X, Y, Z. So that would help push in that first trip.
Okay. And I love that. My experience with, and we'll talk about this later, is a little bit different, but because I didn't make that option, I think when I had the opportunity to go back, I then recognized I missed a major opportunity, a growth experience. And so since then, my 1-year sabbatical has become a 20-year sabbatical. Just that's kind of how radical it went. And all of the people are probably thinking, well, what does this have to do with real estate? Well, it definitely does have to do with real estate. And I know that, especially because of the people that you're typically focusing on and helping. But help us understand, like why did you even get involved in real estate? Like, how did it even come onto your radar if you weren't around people? Because I think you said earlier that you weren't around people that were in real estate. So how'd that happen?
Yeah. Well, and again, looking back on this and analyzing it, it's a little easier to see, but I was in St. Petersburg, Russia during September 11th. And, you talk about the scars and the turning points in your life, and at that point I lived in Kazakhstan. I was on my way home and was taking a little jaunt coming back to Ohio State. And, when that happened, it was, I felt like I just wanted to be American again. It was, I was, just a citizen of the world or whatever you want to say. But at that moment, looking back, it's like, man, I want to get with my people. I want to be home, and I want to fight the good fight from my home. Yep. And it's easy to see now. In the middle of it, you can't tell. Mm-hmm. So when we moved to a little town called Punta Gorda, which is in Southwest Florida near Fort Myers, I wanted to be American. Like, it's like a Midwestern town. I wanted to know the mayor, not the barber, because I don't have anything to give him, but, and so that was where, so my wife to be came down, and I said, how are we going to make money? And I just got my MBA at Ohio State, but in this little town, there's no corporate jobs, and remote work wasn't in vogue that long ago. Mm-hmm. And so I said, how can I make money at this? And so people were coming down, residential, commercial projects, and it was just a straight hustle. And I said, I can do this here and still have this small town lifestyle that we want, and invest personally in commercial properties and do things. And that's what we did. And that's how we grew our wealth and grew our lives there. My wife opened a yoga studio there. So it was like your Norman Rockwell type thing down there for a long time. So that's how we kickstarted it. And then we're off to the races.
Perfect. So you're in this town in Florida, and you just knew right away that you wanted to get it. Was it because of the wealth building aspect? Was it because of the sales aspect? Was it because that was what you'd heard from other people?
Well, it was making a life in a small town and with skills. And that was the biggest driver. And then when I got trained in sales skills, then that was fascinating to watch them actually work, because, it's manipulation. A skillful salesperson, it's just a matter of intent. It can be the con artist uses the same tools, the leading questions, the closes, and to watch that science happen. And it's pro versus amateur, right? Because typically when you're dealing in the residential where I started, you're the pro and you're dealing with somebody who maybe transacts every 4 years. So you were pro amateur, and to watch these tools work was fascinating. But again, that root of what I described before, like an advocate, a Midwest guy saying, hey, you finally got a guy saving you, protecting you from sharks, kind of is how I felt that role. But yeah, to have that, to see those tools work in any environment was just magical for me at the time. And then, we built from there.
Okay. And that helps. And also too, since we both love the sales profession, when Terry is talking to us about manipulation, it's not like manipulating somebody so that they don't do something. It's just helping people understand what is important for themselves, right? Because we both love the sales profession. Sometimes we get a bad rap in the sales profession, but when it's done properly, it is the most noble, in my opinion, profession that exists, because you're really helping people ultimately solve their problems. And when you understand not just the art, which I think is what a lot of people talk about, but as to your point, Terry, is when you start to understand the science behind it, then it can be an extremely powerful profession, which is one of the reasons that we continue to do this. So you decided, you wanted to get back to your roots. You wanted to get back to the American small town, be able to connect with people, and yet today you're kind of bridging these two worlds. So help us understand. I think I understand it, right? Yeah. But help the going along audience and family understand today, what's the focus on working with helping foreigners understand more about the U.S. real asset market?
Well, it's a good lesson for all of us, because when you go back, as I was jamming myself into this environment, right, as a result of that September 11th scar, again, on this analysis that I've hacked together after, so much of us, so I hear so often, or see those little feel good lines. What did you want to be when you grew up, right? Or when you were 10, did you want to be an astronaut, a scientist? And what are you doing now, right? So, and does that match? Because so often that's our core, right? Who we are. And so there I was cranking away in the small town, ignoring that as a result of September 11th in a reaction. And then one day a couple French guys stumble into a rematch of some offices around town, and, nobody could understand them. And it's like in this small town, like, I don't know what language you're speaking. Go see Terry. He speaks a handful over there. He'll take care of it, right? So my buddies sent them over. And these guys, when I broke it down, basically the nuts and bolts of it is that they were getting ripped off. And they're owned by their own people, right? So a French guy was buying all this land. He would go back to France, triple, quadruple the price, and then lie to them and say, oh, it's really worth this. And bring them in to see it and say, don't talk to any Americans. Don't talk to any real estate brokers. They're all crooks. But these guys just happen to wander in. And once after the back and forth where they didn't trust me, and then I showed them just basic, simple MLS and said some of the tools, boom, that kickstarted again. And it turns out there were hundreds, maybe thousands that I don't even know about, these French investors that their own people, Billy, were ripping them off, and it was appalling. And there's a whole chain of people, title companies, everybody involved. So we rolled up our sleeves and started unwinding them from this. And I went to France and saw some of those guys and stayed with them. And that formed the base of, boy, we could still really do good. And these were regular folk. These weren't pro investors. They were putting their savings in. They were just doing things. And so as we started unwinding and the Pandora's box got bigger and bigger, this formed the basis of my business now. But this was the opportunity. Like, hey, I can give back. Like when I was stuck in France and I didn't know where I was going, and all these people took me in their home and took me to Milan for Christmas, like all these things. I said, I can finally pay them back. And so that was how we got into it. And then from there, that formed the base. And then we moved to Orlando, again, to bigger things, bigger machines. But that was still the same basis of it. It's like helping these guys who were literally like me in France, wandering, lost in the woods. And so that's how we got into it. And it's been great so far.
Yeah. So, it's great to hear those kinds of stories, because when you've been on the other side of that, when you have been frustrated, when you felt like you've been taken advantage of, maybe you were, maybe you weren't, you just didn't understand the cultural norms that were happening, or the norms of that specific area. Like a lot of times that will happen when people have never been involved in real estate investing before. That it's a new language, it's a new territory. And so you need someone who can actually have that abundance mindset, versus what it sounds like you were dealing with was someone who was very much in a scarcity mindset. Like, I'm just going to keep everybody here in my little box and I don't want anybody else to move. So you had this specific instance that happened, and you ended up meeting hundreds of people as a result of that, and doing the right thing, having an abundance mentality. Right. But I guess the investor in me wants to know, well, what exactly was drawing so many people, in this instance from France, to this specific area in Florida? Like, what was it that was attracting them, and why were they not? And this is kind of like self-serving question. Why were they not investing in their backyard? They were looking somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a great question. When you, on the surface, the product that they were getting sold over there was, hey, you can take title, own a Florida lot, sunshine, beaches, golf, everything, and take title in your own name. And look, it's only $60,000 or $70,000, which in France, you probably can't even get a car for that, and you could have and it's true. It was a lot. You take title to it. The only difference was you can really buy that thing for 10 or 15,000, on the open MLS or on the market. So I think that's what was drawing them, where they could have it in their own name. So they didn't have the proper structure. They didn't set up their tax efficiencies and everything, which we help them with now. But I think it was, hey, I'm going to speculate, and they could show their friends. And sometimes they would fly over and say, look, this is my lot. And it was. So I think that pride of ownership and that attractiveness of, hey, I have a piece of Florida land, I might go there, stay in a hotel, play golf, see my land, was what they were after. And the value and the tax efficiencies and the systems and the structures was kind of detail. It was just sign here. And as we discovered, you can buy easily. You don't need a notary. You don't need anything. If you want to buy land cash, you just wire the money and it's yours from overseas. Selling is a different story. And that's what these people are finding out the hard way. Unfortunately.
So let's unpack this a little bit, right? And I want to preface this, because you started talking like what we're doing here. We're not giving anybody any advice. Terry is just going to share some stories, right? He's just sharing things that have actually happened to him. This is in no way any type of advice, but because you are really focused on, right? And I live here in Spain, and I invest exclusively in the United States as of today, but we're taking it the other way, like. So you didn't say they were looking for massive returns in this specific instance, right? It was really
Correct.
pride of ownership, saying that I own a piece of property somewhere else and another country, and being able to more lifestyle is what it sounds like to me. So tell us about what are some of the things that are additional positives that you've heard, and then be ready, because I'm going to ask you to tell us some of the challenges when you're doing investing as a foreign national, non-resident in a place. So that this is a foreign non-resident.
Mm-hmm. Well, as they come in, what they found was that, like I mentioned before, you could buy easily, send the wire, you get the title, that's it, done. Hey, I'm happy. Now the unwinding part, like as people start coming in now, and when we do it, well, I'll call correctly, is when you come in with an entity or like a Florida LLC, and what we've started doing, and for better for worse, is I've have a statement of authority where I actually act on their behalf here for them. And they operate then purely almost like as an American, and I can sign docs, notarize, I can go. And as you know, in Europe, the notary is a big wrench in the operations. Here in America, again, we don't realize how great we have. I go to Chase, hey, Susie, how you doing? Boom, 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 boom. These guys, and they take a piece of the action over there in Europe. So all this stuff, when you say were people looking to come here, I think what we're getting more into in the United States is, when the government is there at every step, clawing, and bureaucracy and the machine, you see Brexit as a result of that. Like people get tired of the heavy hands stealing and oppressing, and, so they come here and they want their capital movement. It's so much more efficient, even with all the problems we have. And I won't say problems, but steps. It's so much more efficient and liquid than what I've seen in Europe. So that's kind of what we saw. So when they can now operate with an LLC, with me as a signer on their LLC, it takes trust, but that's one model, and they still have their bank account. I don't touch their bank account. We set up a U.S. bank account and everything, but that's how they started coming in. So you have France LLC, and they're doing things now, and and it's great.
And so how are people typically working? So I'm just going to imagine I live in Lille, and I've found out I'm listening to the show. I'm watching Terry. I'm like, oh, hey, cool. This is really awesome. Like, if you think of that person, how many people typically are actually coming over to visit and meet you personally before they're actually investing in a property in the United States?
I never thought of it that way, but very, very few. Very few, because by the time I get to them, we've gone through my network typically, and they kind of know what they're looking for, the structures, everything can be done remotely. Ironically enough, they'll typically come over after the investment, after, we've kind of done all the paperwork and gotten us through. So to answer your question, to kick the tires, maybe 10%, and the other 90, we kind of run it all through and do it before they actually come. And then when they come, they can see what they have and touch and feel and see that it's real. Okay,
that helps. And I know that with your focus on specifically, I know you've focused on a number of people outside of outside of France, but even with your website, it's in English and in French, and so that also facilitates. So what role is technology playing in helping your prospective investors and your investors?
Oh, the fact that we were pushing uphill as you know, trying to do this overseas with doing things virtually and e-notaries and all this stuff that was so uphill. And that's the silver lining of this COVID mess, is that now it's mainstream. So, with the technology, the biggest thing is this e-notary. And this is just recent where, Americans could do e-notaries now it's been a couple years now, but we just started with e-notaries for foreigners on foreign soil. There's a company, Notary Cam, that will do this, and we have a title company that accepts those. And that sounds like a little thing. It's like, hey, big deal. That's a game changer for us.
Oh, yeah.
Because now, they can do that doc again, I'll do power of attorney for personal investors, or now they can even just sign documents themselves for closings. And that has been the biggest wrench in our, investing personally for people that want to invest personally that we've finally solved. And, especially with the lockdowns that I keep hearing about that you guys have in Europe, where you can't even, move hardly. And, the notaries aren't going out. The embassy was closed. So this was a logistical issue. So technology, that e-signing, e-notary has been huge, and now the platforms into where funds, and you can manage things like and monitor on third party platforms has been huge as well. But I'd say the biggest one is that notary, because now we can sign things, we can sell, because it's always an eye opener for foreigners. Typically when they go to sell, no one ever told them about FERPTA 15%. No one ever told them they've got to now get an ITIN and file U.S. taxes. No one told them they got to get in front of a notary or they can't sell their lot, sell their property. So all these things have become a little easier to handle now with technology, for sure.
Okay, and that, yeah, those things usually should be dealt with up front, right? Because then you miss those on the back end. So and so like. Sometimes I get questions all the time, right? Hey, Billy, how I want to set up a bank account. How easy it is. I live in Spain. I live in Italy. I live in France, and I don't plan on moving to the United States. But one of the things is you've got to have a bank account. Like it's something like this is super tactical, but I just want you to kind of help people understand where your company are and how you can help people understand these types of things. So how would someone set up a bank account that doesn't live in the United States? Once again, you're just sharing a story. Everybody's situation is different. Yeah, it's just a conversation. So.
Right. And, that's a great question, because every 10 years or so, there's another obstacle to that. So again, with September 11th and the terrorism, they started watching the money movements, and then after the bust, there was Dodd-Frank that had all these other requirements. So it seems like you'd take a step forward and there'd be an obstacle, step forward and there would be an obstacle. But they make you open a bank account. You have to be here present. So again, if we said, hey, I want to get involved or I want to start doing it, again, with a statement of authority. And we work with local banks and we have relationships for decades. So with some of these, but there's a statement of authority for an LLC that, I can open it up with authority. I don't have signing authority on the bank or anything like that, but we can do things for the LLC. And that's the easiest way that we found. And again, with all the regulars say, hey, you can't do that. Yeah, you shouldn't be able to do that. But, as long as we have it registered with the state, we're okay. And we open bank accounts and do that. But that would be the step one. You'd have to have an agent there. And that's the trust. I mean, it's, when we talk about finding people online or doing things like that, these steps are big, especially if you're going to have somebody be able to sign. It's almost like an attorney relationship. And I'm not an attorney by any means, but, like that relationship where, hey, here's my guy, we're doing moves. We talk about things and then we execute here on this side. So to open a bank account aside, I mean, hey, come on over, go to Disney World and bring the kids and we'll have fun. And you could open one yourself, or that's set up the LLC, statement of authority. And we work with an attorney and a CPA, because then just basically, I'm a nuts and bolts, I'm a process guy, right? So we now, after all these years, have refined a process where, hey, boom, let's do a statement of authority. Boom, let's set up your LLC with these docs. Boom, let's, so get an ITIN for the accountant, because when you make a move, you'll have to file U.S. taxes. Let's do FERPTA exemptions, all those things, to where it's like a pipeline now. And then you're rocking and rolling. Kind of, again, the goal is invest as an American. You're not the outsider getting ripped off like these guys. Now you have a Florida LLC and you're operating. And a lot of people might even be able to see it if we put the actual owner a couple layers behind to do what they want to do.
And so when you get to actually understand the process and you get to, I mean, we just use something like a bank account, but I want everybody to understand in the Going Long family is one of the things that you said is relationships. And this is really a relationship business. And so when you have to be able to build trust, and you have to be able to gain the trust of your prospective investors. And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with people that you worked with in the past, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but at the same time, when you have the local relationships, that is part of understanding the strength of your team. And this is one of the things here on the Going Long podcast that we really, really understand is the power of teams and the power of taking your time to build the relationship. Like, strong relationships don't happen overnight. They don't happen overnight. It takes time, right? And the important part is just, and I want everybody to hear what Terry said, and that's why I wanted to stop here and just reiterate that it is about relationships, because then that's when you put your heads together and you come up with solutions to sometimes problems that if you were trying to do it by yourself, you're not going to figure it out. Like, you're just not, because you don't know what you don't know. So I want to pivot a little bit before we get into the Going Long Final Three, Terry. And I know one of the things that you've been working, you've been serving your investor base, and help us understand, like, so we talked about France a lot, but I know that you also work with people from many countries. So just give us an idea of kind of the different countries that you're working with before I go into my last question before the Going Long Final Three.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the bulk is, again, France and then China, which is fun. My Mandarin isn't as sharp as my French, but it's fun to do it and do deals. Sometimes I have to do Chinglish or whatever you want to call it, jump back and forth, but that's fun. And then in Orlando, as you can imagine, Puerto Rico and Latin America, those guys are starting to move, especially with what's going on in Venezuela. It's a crime down there. Like the stories we're hearing of people getting capital out of, Venezuela and South America in general. So that's kind of been our bulk. I haven't done as much in other countries in Europe, but that's been the core, like from China or Chinese speaking people from various areas, France and then Latin America.
Got you. Okay. Perfect. So that helps to understand a bit of where you are geographically, which is pretty much the whole world. And another thing, so you've started seeing people from different places around the world. You have a specific model that you're working on, but it sounds like you've also really started doing something else in terms of investment funds. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about what that is and why that's potentially something that is interesting for someone who's not a U.S. citizen or a non-U.S. citizen, non-U.S. resident that they may want to find out about.
Sure. And that's where, it's just the evolution where at some point, when I have a dozen LLCs and I'm filing the taxes and, signing for all these little things, and these guys all have a similar investment objective. And so these vehicles, and again, I have to find it my own time. Of course, guys like you and some of the listeners probably have been working in funds and syndications for decades and it's old hat, but we had to arrive at it at our own time, in which we have. So now these guys, rather than go through all that, we have a syndication that we're putting together for distressed commercial notes. Because again, they just want return. And so when we have that conversation of pride of ownership, which they have for all these years, it didn't really appreciate as a speculation move, and they're like, well, I paid taxes, HOA fees at times, and didn't get the appreciation. Let's go in and get some, distressed assets or something we can do a value add in that fund structure. And, I wish I'd have found this out 10 years ago or had this, by going on podcasts or listening to podcasts like yours to see like, boy, this whole structure is there. So yeah, we've set up a syndication to a fund. We're not at a fund yet, but syndications to put some of these guys into it to where they can invest with one vehicle together. And then we can hit the bigger projects as well, basically aggregating and then doing these projects in Orlando. And then again, it's just the evolution of, vacant lots in Southwest Florida to, income producing properties in Orlando. And, a lot of these guys, we're helping them unwind from places around the country to come and focus into the fund, like Detroit. We're unwinding a couple of French investors from Detroit. It's just a mess. But the good news is we're getting that together so that we can, swing with a bigger bat.
Perfect. And are those like a exemption? We don't get into too much of that kind of stuff here, but are they like a Regulation S kind of thing that you're typically working with people on, or what is that? At
this point, we just have a multi-member LLC and keep it simple, and we're doing those with the group. And again, that's where with a fund, it'd probably be a Reg S because it's so much easier if it's exclusively foreigners. Right. And that's where we would evolve into with the Reg S. But right now it's just simple, multi-member LLCs. But awesome. And that's where when you dig into those worlds, you see like the SEC, it's like, wait, they have all these regs, but Reg S is basically, well, we're here to protect Americans. Foreigners, we don't care what they do. So it gives you some freedoms with Reg S's, but it's a good tool, especially in our niche, for avoiding a lot of the regulations there. In a good way.
Yeah, exactly. In a very good way, because it's it's one of those things, right, Terry? I mean, the rules are there, and we understand what the rules are, and then we're here once again. The sales profession. It goes back to what we were talking about in the very beginning. Right. When you're here to help people solve their problems, then that's why I love the sales profession, because that's what we do. We help people to solve their problems, which is awesome. So, I kind of alluded to it earlier, man. Yeah. But it's time to get to the going long final three. And the thing is, Terry, I never ask anybody the going long final three unless they tell me you're ready. So are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
You were born ready, man. Born ready. So here we go. So Ohio style. So we started on your side of the pond before in Orlando, even though you're in Phoenix today. And I like to bring it back to this side of the pond. So me being here in Barcelona, I always love to know, what is your favorite European city, either that you visited, Terry, or still on your bucket list to visit?
I chewed on this one a little bit, and I always have a soft spot for Lille because that was formed my life there. I have a soft spot, but in terms of a favorite one, when we went back to Aix-en-Provence and we stayed right downtown, that has to be my favorite because it has a mix of everything. It's a student city. It's South. I'm a Floridian now, my blood's thinned out, so I like the warmth, but it's still slightly touristy where the cruise ship. I mean, that area, Provence, was fantastic. We could go see go to Monte Carlo from there. So even though we've been to other places, Aix-en-Provence, if I could go back and do it again, I would live there. I think so. That's beautiful.
Yeah, c'est une très bonne ville.
Très, très bon, oui.
Which is cool. So that doesn't happen very much. Two guys from Ohio speaking French. We like to have fun here.
Yeah, right.
Awesome. So are we going to go with Aix-en-Provence or are we going to go with Lille?
I'm going with Aix-en-Provence because I'm older now. Okay. My bones need warmed, so
there
I need to
right. Aix-en-Provence. All right, here we go. All right, cool. So that's awesome. So the other thing is when you, like one of the things I see all the time, really successful people all the time, every single time, one thing is in common, have only made one mistake in their entire, well, I get that wrong, every single time. All right, maybe it's been make a number of mistakes, but mistakes, or you want to call it learning opportunities, however you want to call it. Like, if you can share that one lesson that you think would be really important for our Going Long family, what would that one lesson be to help us in our journey?
Well, a positive lesson that I took out was back in the bubble, again, of 2005, where I mentioned before the podcast, my wife had a yoga studio in that little town, and we were renting a nice space, and the bubble, the prices crashed. And I was doing deals. I was putting people into all the units. So I knew to the penny what everyone was paying, and we were paying twice that. And so we went in to ask the landlord and said, look, we'll sign a longer term extension, just lower our rent on this commercial space. And he politely told me to, take a walk, let's say. And my Ohio temper, my Irish temper was fuming, so I stormed out of there. But what I learned was, when I was so angry, that very next day, we hunted for commercial properties to purchase. And we found a fantastic one right downtown that ended up being a huge studio, a residence, an office. And so the lesson was, if he had accepted that, and I was so distraught because I wanted to be there for a long time, but if he had said yes, I would have never hunted that building. I would have never got the great deal. I would have never had a beautiful exit out of that to come to Orlando. So what ended up being, sometimes the lesson is, I was so mad. Why did he do this? And now in retrospect, when those things happen, I say, well, you know what? It's good. That didn't happen. So now another door is going to open up. And it's so cliche, but I learned it there, because if he, heaven forbid, would have said yes, we'd have been leasing out in the same little place for 3 to 4 years. We were ready to sign an extension. But, who knew everything that would happen in Florida and everything? It changed the course of our investment future, from that guy being such a hard-headed jerk. And so that would be the lesson is, take it as a blessing and something tapping your shoulder saying, don't go here, go somewhere else. And look at it as that, rather than have smoke come out of your ears like the younger me had back then.
It's part of the experience, man, part of the experience. So thanks for sharing that, for sure. And sharing that forward with us. And the last of the Going Long final three, Terry, is we always like to feed the mind here to wrap things up. So help us understand, what book would you recommend to the Going Long family?
A great book that I saw that was made into a movie, and it's, again, goes back to Ohio. You don't realize how much impact where you come from shapes you. But Hillbilly Elegy, I don't know if you had a chance to read that book or see the movie, and it would help understand like the dynamics, I think, of what's going on in America right now as well, because it's it talks about where some of these issues that we're seeing, and social issues. It's not limited to race and gender. It talks about like the guys, the hillbillies from the holler, they don't have a chance either, and they're white, and it does nothing to do with race. It's just kind of a socioeconomic place. And it says it has a shared struggle, that we all go through it. It's real eye opening. I mean, I burst out in tears. Actually, I was listening to it in my earphones, and 2 instances I burst out in tears because it was kind of my story. And I think a lot of us will relate, and it'll help outsiders, especially Europeans, see, maybe the Appalachia that doesn't get the look, but it helps you understand kind of what dynamics of what's going on in America right now. So great book.
Bibliology. So we will include that in the show notes as well, get some insight into culture, find out what's going on even more. And wow, man. Terry, this is really a great conversation, being able to connect with you, being able to understand kind of the things that have transpired in your life over the last 20 years, being able to live in multiple countries, understanding what it's like to be in a place where you don't understand the language, you don't understand the culture, and you know what it's like to need help from other people. And as a result of that, you've grown as an individual, you've gone on your path, and you've recognized, right, because you had an opportunity to help these two people that were kind of getting taken advantage of. And you remembered to those days when you were by yourself or struggling, and by helping those people, you've now actually been able to open a whole new world where you can continue to help people from all over the world and help them through a tangible asset, which is real estate. And you've seen that there are even more opportunities that you're able to help people beyond that with funds and things like that. And I know that, like, I just want to keep talking to you forever. And I know there's a lot of people that are listening and they're like, I just need to figure out, I got to get in touch with Terry. He's talking about things that are really important to me. I know he's been through this. I know he can help me out. So help us understand, Terry, like, what is the best way for the Going Long family to get in touch with you and your team?
Yeah, the easiest way is on our website, buckeyerealty.com, and I have a subpage /Billy, so that we can specifically in the different languages continue this conversation. So again, I'm on LinkedIn and everything, and if I'm sure you'll post that in the show notes. But If you go to that page for buckeyerealty.com /Billy, we can continue it there, set up a time to talk on Signal and or Google Meetings or whatever it is. So that's the one channel. You know, the Facebook and everything, I've done accidental posts on Facebook, so I close that stuff down. But, you know, we could have a direct channel there, buckeyerealty.com /Billy.
All right, buckeyerealty.com /Billy. We'll include that in the show notes as well.
Yep.
And listen, Terry, I want to thank you, man. I really appreciate you shedding some light on what it is that you're doing, how you're helping people that are not in the United States really be able to understand more about the U.S. market, specifically in Orlando where you are, but really help being able to also handhold people and walk them through it. So thank you very much for investing your time with me and the entire Going Long family, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate what you're doing out there too, Billy. Good to see an Ohio guy out there. We're like kindred souls out there halfway across the world.
Exactly. Awesome. So just a couple quick words for the Going Long family as well. Listen, everybody, thanks so much for investing your time with Terry and I today. Terry, like, he literally left it here. And I know there's so many people that are actually wanting to know more about how you can take this investing into your own hands. Terry's like spelled it out for you. I mean, he's made it really, really easy. And so you get an opportunity also today to share today's episode with 2 or 3 other people, right? Take that action, share it with 2 or 3 other people so that you can be the person that makes the positive impact on people in your life, right? Terry's story is really, really awesome. And you can be another positive influence on these other 2-3 people. I also want to ask you to leave an honest review of today's conversation. Like, I really want to know. I read through every single review. I know Terry wants to know as well. What are the things that you liked about today's conversation? What are the things you'd like to hear more about, or the things you want us to follow up on? Like I said, I go through every single one of those. So leave us an honest review. Really appreciate that. And it also helps us to attract other fantastic guests like Terry. And you know what? I would say also too, I'm really excited to welcome you back on the very next conversation of the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels. And until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Wow. Don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? You know, when I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me like a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode. So go out and make it a great day.